You got
Welcome
it.
back to the Retail Initiative podcast. We're in for a really good one today. I have Mamie Brown from Tucker Brown with me. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
It's great. It is so good to have you. You have such a cool store, such a cool everything. So I'm excited to dig into the brand and your story and all of those pieces. Before we get into it, tell us about Tucker Brown and like what the store is, so just to give some context for everything else that we're about to get into.
Yeah. So my dad actually started Tucker Brown in 1986. So we are turning 40 years old in 2026. So it's a pretty wild journey. We've been in retail for a very long time.
So you grew up in the store.
Yeah. I grew up in the back room of the store. And I just remember I loved all the clothes. Obviously, they were all way too big for me because I was I was a little girl. But I'm the oldest of four, and every single time one of us were born, there was no social media. So there was like a big poster that they would do in the window of like what our names were and when we were born, because we were this like small boutique in Lubbock, Texas.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I've grown up in retail. I remember going to the Dallas Market Center when they did not allow children, and my parents would like sneak us in to go see all of their friends.
Dallas Market, if you're listening, it's a story.
This was in a really old building, so not in the new one. But yeah, I swore I would never do it. We kind of have had stores in Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas. And when I was in college, I went to Texas Tech, and my dad had the store in Lubbock. And I just kind of jumped back in because it was there and he needed help. And this was right around the time that online was really picking up and social media. And I graduated with an English lit degree and was like, I'm going to go get my master's or I'm going to go to law school, but I want to take a year off. So I became a rep at Dallas Market Center, and I've never left the industry.
The year off.
Yeah, the year off is a lifetime off.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, okay, so I came back.
That is incredible. So I want to dig into a few of those pieces and talk about some of the transitions that you've made. So first I have to go back to some of Tucker Brown's story, even before you've always been super involved because it's a family business. But as far as your career is concerned, super involved. What led, when did you move from Lubbock? Because now your store is in Fort Worth and the Stockyards, which y'all, if you're listening and you've never been to the Fort Worth Stockyards, you
are missing out.
It's the coolest spot in Texas. And I'm not saying that. I visit, I'm Texan through and through. It is the coolest single little area in Texas. You have to go and check out Tucker Brown. But how did you, what led to the move from Lubbock to Fort Worth? How did that happen?
Yeah. So, my dad actually grew up on a farm in West Texas and showed cattle his whole life. So he has really deep ties to the Western industry. He wanted to open a store in Austin about 10 years ago. And he had some friends from college who lived here in Fort Worth, and they were real estate agents. And they were like, don't go to Austin. Austin is going to be oversaturated. You're going to be this small fish, big pond. You should consider coming to Fort Worth. Fort Worth is really growing. There's a lot of potential here, and there's some really great real estate. And so he came to Fort Worth and he called me and he said, I think I'm going to need help because we still have the store in Lubbock, but I'm going to move to Fort Worth and I'm going to do this. Will you come help me? And at this point, I was in a weird part of my career in the industry. And I was like, yeah, why not? Sure. I'll do it for a year. Famous last words.
These years, they get you.
I know. I was like, I'll do it for a year. I'll come help you get your website and social media. And then you can hire someone and I'll go do something else. And I moved to Fort Worth and I fell in love with it and he fell in love with it. And after COVID, our lease was up and we didn't know what we were going to do. And we ended up doing a booth at the National Finals Rodeo because it was held in Fort Worth. And I'd always had a heart for the Western industry. And he realized that we were something that was missing in that industry as far as like crossover. And this was right when the Stockyards was being redeveloped, and NFR was like the first time they had kind of opened the doors to this new development. And I took him down there and I was like, we're going to get a retail spot in the Stockyards. And he said, okay, this is my last hurrah. So if we don't get it, like, we got to figure something else out. And I was like, no, we're going to get a spot. And I think I harassed people for 3 months telling them that we were like the perfect store to be in the Stockyards. And now we've been there for almost 3 years.
That is awesome. So what do you mean? Like, we're what's missing in like the Western industry? If I misquoted you, I'm sorry, but what do you mean by that?
So I think when you think about, and again, my dad's been doing this since the 80s, the way that fashion and boutiques and buying has evolved in the last 40 years, it's very different than when he started. And for the most part, if you want to open an online store and you want to have a boutique, it's not that hard to get started and to buy inventory and to like get into it. Now, to have a long lasting, successful business, it takes a lot more work. To have a brick and mortar, this is not a hobby. This is a career path. And the way that fashion has evolved as far as like fast fashion, it's really changed the way that people buy and the way people shop. And the Western industry is very traditional fashion. You've got Wrangler, which is an old company. You have Kimes, which is a fairly new company, but they're denim and they cater to a very specific market. And this also, when we started kind of thinking about this, was right when Yellowstone came out. And everybody decided that cowboy was cool. But the kind of more well-known Western brands weren't necessarily catering to the New Yorker who just wants to play dress up for a weekend in the Stockyards. I love mixing those traditional pieces with the more boutique styles that we carry. But kind of taking that crossover is what we feel like we're bringing to the industry. Bringing those kind of fast fashion, trendy, buy now, wear now looks to pair with your traditional Western pieces.
My gosh, I love that. One of these days, like, I just want to get some Western people in just to do like a deep dive in Yellowstone's effect on retail. Cause like, I mean,
wild.
Just like, we could just talk Takova's boots. Like, that was literally like a golden platter just given to them to explode. But the way that brands have been able to take that and capitalize on it, I think has been incredible. Because I don't think it was inherently, I could maybe be wrong, but I doubt Cavender's boots saw this massive increase in sales from Yellowstone, because I don't know if the person who's not Western was even going to think to go to that store. They're going to go to a store like Tucker Brown that's a lot more approachable and not as like, when a non-Western person thinks Western, they don't typically think super positive, but they will of your store.
Yeah. I think Cavender's and Boot Barn as well have done a really good job of taking the reins of Yellowstone and just running with it and creating lifestyle brands. So you have this, everybody wants to live this Yellowstone, Montana lifestyle. And I think that they've done a really good job of creating lifestyles and brands around that. Whereas we are catering more towards this like Stockyards, Billy Bob's, night out, Nashville type environment. If that makes sense.
You just described my college. I used to go to Billy Bob's every Thursday night for college night, but we're going way too far back.
Okay, my head of operations, Helen, she got engaged at Billy Bob's. So Billy Bob's has a history.
Oh, I love it. It's probably been 20 years since I've gone. If you're not familiar with what we're talking about, Billy Bob's is like what's called the world's largest honky tonk. It's basically a dance floor, concert venue, bar,
Bull riding
in one thing. It's massive.
Restaurant.
Huge.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's such a cool place. It's right next to the stockyards. Okay, so Tucker Brown, I mean, y'all have grown so much, and the way that your brand has shifted and evolved, and you're so in tune with your customer, which I love. Now you're brick and mortar, but you have made this shift to this online presence. What, I guess first off, like what got you thinking, okay, we really need to do this whole online thing back then? Like, how did it get started originally?
So I was still in college, and the store was in Lubbock when we started talking about online. My sister was really into building websites and Squarespace specifically. She was, dating the OG Tucker Brown website.
My first website was Squarespace, so I don't want to, no judgment.
I loved Squarespace. But yeah, so that's kind of how we got into online. My dad has always been really passionate about email marketing. So he has a really intense list, and he would send out, photos of new things just from Constant Contact. And then he would say, like, text or call us if you want us to send you one, or if you want us to hold you one. And so when we did the website, it was great, and it allowed people to kind of look at what we had, but the inventory wasn't connected. I think we were using ShopKeep at the time, and it wasn't connected to that, and it wasn't connected to Constant Contact. And so it didn't get a whole lot of focus. We did the social media thing, and when we switched to Shopify, we did the website through that. When I came to Fort Worth, I don't think we realized, we were so lucky when COVID happened that we already had all the pieces in place to continue selling things. Everything was already hooked up to go on the website. I don't think we realized until COVID how important that aspect of our business was, though. Yeah.
I think that's the journey a lot of retailers have gone through. I wouldn't say that it was always on the back burner, but it was like, if it grows, it grows, but this is our focus.
Right.
And then COVID hit, and it was like, thank God. And then some people were like, oh, I guess we really should do this. And they did what they needed to do, and they threw together websites. They did what they needed to do. And so COVID hits, you're like, oh, geez, like this thing has a ton of potential. What did it look like after that point where you were like, okay, let's really start to up our game in this and really go all in on seeing this grow?
Yeah. So right after COVID was around the time we got the Stockyards lease. And I don't think we anticipated what the Stockyards potential was. We didn't really fully get it. We just knew it was this really cool space. We were going to be a very unique store in this area, and we were really excited about that. I want to say that 8 million people come through the Stockyards in a year, and that number may have gone up because I think that might be 2022 statistic.
Wow.
It's a lot of people, lot of people. And we kind of realized in that moment, oh my goodness, we have this incredible opportunity to make these people who live in New York and live in Washington and, live in Colorado, we have this opportunity to make them returning customers because they may never come to the Stockyards ever again, but they can get our emails, they can shop online, they can follow us on Instagram. And I think that's when we realized we have an incredible opportunity to make this more than just these four walls.
Yeah. That's amazing. And so I think one of the challenges that a lot of retailers face is like the store activity never goes away. There's always team stuff. There's always unpacking boxes and all the things that go into managing a storefront. Yet you do an amazing job. Your social looks incredible. Your photography is great. Your content, like, you do such a great job. How have you managed to do both of them so well?
That's such a hard question.
You're like, what is
Because there's some days where I'm like, oh, we're not doing anything well. And some days where I'm like, okay, we're above water. Like, we got this. And then we're, treading water again.
Real quick, can I just pause? And I just want to point that out because I think that's something that a lot of you feel is when you're in it, you're like, I'm not doing enough. It's not like we're below water. We're not doing enough, when on the outside, it's like, oh my gosh, how do they do so much? And so I would argue that feeling rarely goes away, or you can learn to shift your mindset around it. But I think naturally what you said is a very normal feeling for people to have, even high performers that are cranking stuff out. I think what you just said is something a lot of people feel.
I think it's so real. And one thing that we make sure that we have really intentional conversations with our staff is like, burnout is a real thing. And especially when you're with that many people, like on a Saturday, that many Saturdays in a row, it can be tiring being on that often. And, even for our people who aren't on the floor and who are helping in the back, tagging, organizing, doing operations, there's a lot of moving parts. And we really encourage, we're like, go on a walk, just go take a 5-minute walk around the stockyards, just like take some deep breaths. Like, this is our livelihood and it's something we're very passionate about. And, it's 40 years old. It's very much a part of who we are as people, my dad and I, but it's just clothes. And the people that we work with and that work for us, like their well-being and their happiness and our well-being and our happiness and our work-life balance is more important than a lot of those other aspects.
Oh my gosh. Preach it.
But yeah. But the balancing is really hard. I get in trouble with my husband sometimes because I'm editing photos or answering emails in bed. And he's like, we're supposed to be watching The Big Bang Theory. What are you doing? I'm like, well, I didn't get this done at work because I was at my first grader's Christmas play or something like that. Yeah. So I think my best thing that we've done is we've really tried to invest in people that make our lives easier, even at knowing that if we invest in these people, they're going to make our lives easier. The store's going to function better and we're going to function better. We're going to be better employers, better buyers, better humans. And so I would say, even at not fully the sacrifice of your own livelihood, my advice is if you can afford to take a cut to hire somebody who's going to make your life easier and eventually make you more money, I think it's a non-negotiable. I couldn't do anything that I do without the people that we have on our team. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no way.
I think that's so good. And I think especially for people who haven't made that jump yet, I think a lot of times it's we think of it where it's like going to be the same job now just split between two people, and thus like, how will I ever grow? And the idea behind what you're saying, which I think is so true, is you're getting someone that, one, is better at something than you are. So the quality of this thing improves, whether it be your social, your emails, or your store sales, or whatever it is that they're taking off your plate. But now you have this mental freedom and time freedom to do the thing that only you can do. And the more that happens, it's like, I feel like every level up I've ever had in my own business and that I typically see in others was when we mentally freed ourselves to focus on the thing that moves the needle when only I do it. And every time I stay focused on that other stuff, it's like, it's marginal increases. But I don't want marginal increases. I don't know about you.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, any increase is a good increase, but if I'm going to put in this much work and this much time and this much effort, I definitely want to see the needle move.
Yeah. And so when you really started to level up, like, so we worked together, it wasn't 2024. Was it 2023?
Yeah.
It was 2023. So like you were like, okay, let's like really do this. I guess like what was it at that point that kind of prompted, okay, like let's take this to another level in the way that we're approaching this. What was it that prompted it? Because things were going okay before then.
I think it's just kind of going back to hiring people that do things better than you do. There were so many things about our website and that we would want, but we didn't know how to do. And I'm not gonna go learn to code. I'm just not. So being able to find somebody who specialized in that and being able to make our website super user friendly, I think that was a big push. And I also think we had spent so much time and energy and money on our brick and mortar because we remodeled the whole thing and it was like a 3-year process. And so when that was finished, we wanted to make sure that what we were presenting to the rest of the world matched what we were presenting in the Stockyards. And, our store is on the Stockyards website and it's on the Mule Alley website. And if you stay at the Drover and you're on their Drover TV channel, there's a logo of our store. So we wanted to make sure that if you're Googling shopping in the Stockyards or something like that, that what we were presenting to the world was what we represented in the Stockyards. And based on our original meeting that you and I had, based on the reviews that we had read on your website, we knew that that was kind of what your passion was taking these brick and mortar stores and putting their heart and soul into how they represent themselves on the web. And it just felt like a good fit.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And yeah, I mean, that is the goal. And I think that's what most brick and mortar retailers are missing is like you can make a pretty website all day long and Tucker Brown could have a really pretty website, but it needs to not just reflect the brand, but like what you really do for your customer. And I think the way that you do that is great. Okay. So this has been incredible. Couple last questions. So one, if a retailer calls you and they're like, hey, we have gotten to this level, we're looking to get to the next level. Let's say they're a little bit in their journey, but half your size. And I just adore everything you've done. Like, what would be the piece of advice of like, this is the thing to focus on for you to get to the next level?
Oh, It's such a hard question because I think back on my journey and like what I wish someone would have told me. And I'm like, oh my God, like it has been a tornado. This has been like so wild. It could have been Twister. Like I feel very, very fortunate that I have my dad who's been in this industry for 40 years. I think finding a mentor is something that could be really incredible. I think that's an important one, investing in your staff. Again, I'm really, really passionate about that because when you invest in people, they invest in what you're doing. And the more advocates you have for your business, I mean, who doesn't want that?
Yes.
I also just think a big one for me, and this might be cliche, is nobody knows your vision, your story, or what you're wanting to sell more than you do. Don't doubt that. We've been told our whole career we have to find this like niche market, and you fill out these forms that are like, how old is your customer and what is their income and where do they vacation and where do they go to school? And like, I've done all of that. And my dad, I remember, was like, why are we doing this? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. I just want to sell clothes to people who love them. And, I think it's really important to like have a vision of who you want to sell to, but that doesn't mean that that's all you're going to sell to. So I would just kind of like trust your instincts on that. And, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think, I mean, and you've been through my program, you've been through my stuff. So, I'm like all in on perfect customer. And I think Tucker Brown does such a great job of, because to me, there's like two ways we can approach that. There is one where it's like, hey, you know what? Like, we know our vibe, we know our customer, we know how to serve them. And so we're just going to go all in on doing that. And we're not going to keep worrying about this other thing. And I think that's great because you do it in a way that keeps you focused. I think there's this other side where it's almost fear-based of like, I need to keep adding more things because what if someone else walks in and they don't find something? And it's like, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you've done such a good job of staying focused, but not having to go down that rabbit hole because you are so in tune with who that is that you don't need to do the worksheets like might,
They help. I think for me, it's just like when you trust yourself, you're not bringing in stuff that you feel like doesn't align with what you're trying to sell. Mm-hmm. And whether that's for your ideal customer, whether that's for your brand, I think it all kind of comes together. I know for us, when we go to market, Tucker and I have a rule. If we both love it, it's a multiple pack situation. If only one of us loves it and the other one's like, absolutely not, then it's an absolutely not. So, you create these like systems with each other. And I can't speak to anybody who does this by themselves because I don't know what that's like.
Yeah.
But I do think like it took us a long time to move from the 1986 Barrack sweater and Brighton Tucker Brown to the 2024 Fort Worth Stockyards Tucker Brown and figuring out that shift. Yeah. And I also think it's really important to note, like, your store doesn't have to stay the same forever. Like, it should always kind of have the same branding and the same feeling. And we've really stuck to that. But I mean, my dad carried candy cane jumpsuits in the 80s. And, now we're carrying rhinestone y'all t-shirts. So it doesn't have to always be the same. Like, there's room to grow and change and adapt.
Gosh, I feel like with you, I could record like a 4-hour, like, you have so much wisdom up there. I love, this has been such a great episode. And I'm grateful. Thank you for sharing these pieces. Of course. As we wrap up, if people want to find you, so we'll put, links in the show notes, but if people want to find Tucker Brown, if they want to follow you on Instagram, where can they find you?
And so it's Tucker Brown 1986 on Instagram, and it's tuckerbrown1986.com. Yeah.
Those
awesome. Are the two best places. We have a TikTok. I don't know how active it is.
I love it, and that is okay. It is okay to not be everywhere. Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here. So grateful for you. And for those listening, cannot wait to see you next time. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Retail Initiative Podcast. If you want more free resources, trainings, downloads, you can get those at madebycapital.com/podcast. Again, that's madebycapital.com/podcast. And for those of you that are serious and really want to take the success that you've built in your brick and mortar storefront and you want to create that same level of success online, I invite you to schedule a free call with me at madebycapital.com/schedule, where we'll dig into your business, like where things are now, where you're wanting to go, getting really clear on your goals, and what are the 2 or 3 things that might be standing in the way of getting there. Now, look, if we're a good fit, I'd love to share what that looks like. And if not, my hope is that you leave with clarity on where to focus for you to reach your goals. So again, thanks for tuning in. And as always, leave a review, make sure you're subscribed, and I cannot wait to see you next time.